The first time I saw him, he was eating a raw onion like an apple, a massive, pungent vidalia, its papery skin scattered across a kitchen counter that looked like it had last been cleaned during the Obama administration. His name was Jacob, but his username was @TrashBoatKing, and his content was a masterclass in a very specific, very modern form of performance art, being as profoundly, inexplicably off-putting as humanly possible. In the algorithmic coliseum of TikTok, Jacob was a gladiator armed with a dollar store pool noodle and a Canaveral cheese. His videos were a gritty, low-budget exploration of the weird. One day he'd be attempting to vacuum his shag carpet while riding a unicycle, crashing into a bookshelf with a crash that sounded both expensive and inevitable. The next, he'd be reviewing gas station sushi, his commentary a monotone string of observations like, this one tastes like the color beige. It's determined. He had 12 million followers, and they didn't love him so much as they were morbidly, collectively fascinated by him. He was, according to every headline and think piece written about him, one of TikTok's most depraved users. I was one of those followers. But my fascination wasn't morbid. It was envious. I was a content creator, too, but in a different universe entirely. My name was Lena, and my handle was @LenasLens. My world was one of soft, diffuse lighting, neutral-tone sweaters, and perfectly curated aesthetic videos. I did day-in-my-life vlogs in my immaculate, all-white apartment with its single, tasteful monster plant. I shared motivational mindset resets while sipping oat milk lattes, the steam curling up to kiss my perfectly dewy, makeup-free skin. I had 1.2 million followers who called me an angel, goals, and the piece they needed. I had brand deals with minimalist watch companies and sustainable candle brands. I was, by all external metrics, a success. But inside the pristine walls of my apartment, the silence was deafening. Jacob's depravity was loud, messy, and real. His world had texture, the grit of failure, the humor in awkwardness, the unvarnished truth of a guy who didn't care if you saw the dust bunnies under his couch because he was too busy living. My world was a sterile, silent film where every laugh was rehearsed, every tear was strategically shed for engagement, and every piece of content was a calculated transaction. I was selling serenity, but I was drowning in a sea of my own fabrication. The turning point came on a Tuesday. I had just finished filming a self-care evening video. I'd lit a candle, drawn a bath with rose petals, and filmed myself reading a philosophical novel for exactly 4.2 seconds, just long enough for the clip. After I stopped recording, I sat on the edge of my empty, cold bathtub, scrolling through my comments. So inspiring. Queen of Peace. You saved my life with this one. Saved their life. I couldn't even save myself from the crushing weight of my own inauthenticity. To decompress, I did what I always did. I opened Jacob's page. His latest video was him attempting to teach his elderly, three-legged chihuahua, a creature named Giblet, how to do a skateboard trick. The video was 10 minutes of Giblet stubbornly refusing to move, Jacob lying on the pavement next to him, whispering words of encouragement that the microphone just barely picked up. You got this, champ. Just one paw. One little paw. The world's got to see what you got. The video ended with them both taking a nap on the sun-warmed concrete. It was utterly pointless. It was perfect. It was the realest thing I'd seen in years that on a whim, a surge of frustration with my own polished existence, I typed out a comment. This is the only thing on this app that feels like real life. I hit post, expecting it to be swallowed by the thousands of others. Instead, a few minutes later, a notification popped up, a reply from @TrashBoatKing. My heart did a strange little flip. It read, "Real life is messy, friend, but it's a lot more fun than pretending to be a candle. I saw your page. You look like you haven't laughed in a year." I stared at the screen. It felt like a punch to the chest. He saw through it. In his beautiful, chaotic, depraved world, he saw through curated calm of mine. He didn't see Lena's lens. He saw a girl sitting in a cold bathtub, surrounded by rose petals she'd have to clean up, who hadn't genuinely laughed in a year. I didn't reply, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. His words sat with me, a tiny, persistent pebble in the polished shoe of my life. Weeks passed. I kept creating my content. The algorithm loved me. The brand deals kept coming. But the silence in my apartment grew heavier. My viewership, once my validation, started to feel like a jury. I became terrified of making a mistake, of posting a video where the lighting wasn't perfect, of the monster plant looking slightly droopy. I was trapped in a gilded cage I had built with my own perfectly manicured hands. Then, one night, I saw Jacob go live. The title of his live stream was simply, Building a Blanket Fort. Need help. On a whim, I clicked in. The screen was a chaotic jumble of couch cushions, old bedsheets, and Giblet, who was sitting in the middle of it all, looking like a tiny, disapproving gargoyle. Jacob was sitting cross-legged, his face illuminated by the phone's harsh light. There were maybe 15,000 people watching. "All right," he said, his voice a familiar, low rumble. "I need a structural engineer. Cushion base is failing on the west wing." The comments were flying by, a river of jokes, emojis, and LOS. But Jacob wasn't just being funny. He was meticulously folding sheets, tucking corners, his brow furrowed in concentration. Every few minutes, he'd hold up a pillow. This one is a Southwest load-bearing pillow. It's crucial. Don't let anyone tell you different. For an hour, I watched him build this ridiculous fort. He didn't ask for donations. He didn't promote anything. He just built, and he talked. He talked about his day, how he'd found a $20 bill in an old coat pocket, how Giblet had gotten the Zoomies for the first time in months, how he'd accidentally used fabric softener instead of laundry detergent, and now all his clothes smelled like a lavender field exploded. It was mundane. It was magical. I was typing a comment, something about the structural integrity of the couch cushions, when another commenter, a user with a skull emoji in their name, wrote, "This guy is so depraved. Imagine being 35 and building a blanket fort for your 12 million followers. Get a real job. You're a pathetic man-child." The comments erupted. Some defended him. Some piled on. I watched Jacob's face. For a split second, the mask of the absurdist comedian slipped. I saw a flicker of something raw. Hurt. He blinked, gave a small, almost imperceptible shake of his head, and then looked directly into the camera. "Hey, skull emoji," he said, his voice gentle. "I hear you. You're not wrong. I am 35. I am building a blanket fort. But you know what? My dad worked 60 hours a week at a job he hated until his heart gave out when he was 52. He was a real job kind of guy. And you know what he told me on his last day? He said, 'Jake, don't spend your life doing something that makes you feel small just so other people will think you're big.' So, I build blanket forts. It makes me feel big. I'm sorry if it's not enough for you." The chat went silent for a moment. Even the trolls seemed stunned. Then, a wave of hearts and supportive comments flooded the screen. But I couldn't type. I was frozen. Because in that moment, under the flimsy roof of a sheet draped over a couch cushion, I saw it. This wasn't depravity. This was defiance. This was a man choosing joy, choosing play, choosing authenticity in the face of a world that told him to be ashamed of it. He wasn't performing for his followers. He was inviting them into his performance of being alive. That was when the unexpected turn happened. It wasn't a plot twist in his story. It was a sudden, jarring realization in mine. He was free. I was the one who was trapped. I was the one wearing a mask, performing a life of serenity that was actually a prison of perfectionism. My depravity wasn't eating raw onions. It was a depravity of a soul starving for genuine connection, hiding behind a facade of peace. Without thinking, my fingers moved. I typed a comment and hit send before I could stop myself. It was a simple question. How do you do it? The live stream was chaotic, comments flying, but he saw it. He squinted at his phone screen, reading my username. "At Lena's Lens," he said, a slow grin spreading across his face. "The Candle Lady. How do I do what?" I typed again, my heart pounding. How do you build a life that's real, even when people call you depraved for it? He leaned closer to the camera, his face filling the screen. The blanket fort sagged a little behind him. Giblet let out a tiny snore. And then, in a moment of profound, unexpected connection, he spoke directly to me. "You stop building it for them," he said. "You build it for you. You eat the onion because you like the crunch. You ride the unicycle because falling off is funny. You build the blanket fort because you need a place to hide sometimes, and that's okay. He paused. What's your blanket fort, Lena? What's the one thing you'd do if you knew no one was watching? I sat in my pristine apartment, staring at the phone. The live stream was a small window into a world of rumpled sheets and unwavering sincerity. My finger hovered over the end button on my own life. Then I did something I hadn't done in over 2 years. I got up from my perfect couch, walked over to my pristine camera setup, and turned it off. I pulled the white linen curtains shut. Then I went into my bedroom, grabbed every blanket I owned, the expensive cashmere throw, the weighted blanket I'd bought for anxiety but was too embarrassed to show on camera, the faded quilt my grandmother had made me, and I dragged them into my living room. I pulled the cushions off my immaculate, architect-designed sofa and threw them in a pile on the floor. I draped the blankets over my minimalist coffee table, securing them with books I'd only pretended to read. It took me 20 minutes. It was clumsy. It was structurally unsound. It was glorious. I crawled inside, my phone clutched in my hand. The ceiling was a patchwork of fabric. The air smelled like cashmere and memory. I propped my phone up against a cushion, and with trembling hands, I pressed the Go Live button on at Lena's lens for the first time without a single filter, without a planned lighting setup, without an aesthetic in mind. The notifications went out to 1.2 million people. Within seconds, viewers began to pour in. The comments were at first confused, then bewildered. What is this? Is this a new aesthetic? Where is your monster part? Why is it so dark? I took a deep breath. The fear was a physical weight on my chest. Then I thought of Jacob's dad. Don't do something that makes you feel small. I looked into the camera, my face pale in the dim light filtering through the sheets. Hi, I said, my voice cracking. My name is Lena, and for the last 2 years, I've been pretending to be a person who has it all together. I don't. I'm not peaceful. I'm terrified. I'm lonely, and I'm in a blanket fort. The comments started to slow, then stop. People were listening. I've been so afraid of being seen as messy, as real, that I built a life out of things that look good on a screen but feel like nothing when the camera is off. And tonight, I realized that my depravity, my sin, wasn't chaos. It was cowardice. I was too scared to be human. Tears were streaming down my face now, unscripted, unfiltered. They weren't the single, artful tear I'd once filmed for a vulnerability video. These were messy, ugly, snot and saltwater tears. I don't know who I am without the perfect lighting, I whispered. But I'd like to find out. I think I'd like to start by being here, in my blanket fort, with you. The comments erupted again, but this time it was different. The flood of hearts and supportive messages was the same, but the words had changed. They weren't so inspiring or queen of peace. They were, I'm in my blanket fort too. Me too. I've been pretending for so long. I'm crying. This is real. Thank you. Then I saw a notification that made me laugh out loud, a real, unhinged, gasping laugh. @Trashboat King had joined the live. His comment, the only one that mattered in that moment, floated to the top. He wrote, Finally, welcome to the circus. Your uniform is a messy bun and a total disregard for the opinions of people who don't know the structural importance of a Safewest load-bearing pillow. I laughed again, harder. I was in a messy blanket fort, wearing no makeup, crying on a live stream to over 1 million people. And for the first time in my career, I felt seen. I wasn't performing peace. I was sitting in my own beautiful, chaotic, human mess, and I wasn't alone. The emotional climax wasn't a grand gesture. It was a quiet one. After the live stream ended, I lay in my fort, exhausted but light. My phone buzzed. A direct message from @Trashboat King. You did good, Candle Lady. For what it's worth, you just made a lot of people feel like it's okay to not be okay. That's not depraved. That's the whole point. The days that followed were a recalibration. I didn't abandon my platform, but I abandoned my persona. My videos changed. They were no longer silent films of perfection. They became conversations. I filmed myself cooking a meal and burning it. I talk about my anxiety without a script. I sat on my couch, in my now permanently rumpled blankets, and just talked. I lost some followers, the ones who wanted the silent, aesthetic fantasy. But I gained something immeasurably better, a community built on shared humanity, not curated aspiration. And Jacob, our friendship, born in the digital trenches, became real. We'd video chat while he made his bizarre creations, and I worked on my writing, the thing I'd been too scared to admit I wanted to do. He'd show me Giblet's new tricks, and I'd show him the dust bunnies I was finally brave enough to let accumulate under my couch. The world's still cold and depraved. They called me a sellout for leaving my brand. But we knew better. We had learned the secret that the most depraved thing you can be in a world obsessed with curated perfection is simply, messily, unapologetically yourself. The story of the depraved TikTok user and the perfect lifestyle influencer became a viral narrative of its own. People called it a redemption arc. But it wasn't redemption. It was a homecoming. We hadn't become new people. We had finally stopped being afraid to let the world see the ones we'd always been. The heartwarming and uplifting message is this. In a world that constantly asks you to perform, to curate, to perfect, the bravest and most beautiful thing you can do is to be real. Your mess is not a flaw. It's a map. It shows where you've been, what you've survived, and the unique, unrepeatable person you are. Don't let anyone convince you that your authentic self is something to be hidden. Build the blanket fort. Eat the onion. Laugh until you cry. Let the dust bunnies gather. Because the people who are meant to find you won't be looking for perfection. They'll be looking for a place that feels like home. And the only way to build that is to start with the truth of who you are. That's not depravity. That's the most human thing in the world. And it's more than enough.